everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Mara Abrams. I am a member of the KIN, which is a space for conscious entrepreneurs and consciousness on a personal and societal level. I run a consultancy that focuses on civic engagement and democracy, so it's such a great honor to be here with you this morning. And without further ado, I know you wanted to share a little bit about your personal story, so I'm going to skip the big introduction and let you do that. But it's my great pleasure. Give it up for Councilwoman Traci Park.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I am just so incredibly thrilled to see so many folks turned out this morning for this discussion. I'm really excited to have the invitation to be here with Ken. This is such an incredible space. I've had the opportunity to sneak by and poke my head in for a social event, and it's an incredible space and group of people that have been cultivated to participate. So it's a real honor for me to be here. For those of you that I haven't had an opportunity to meet before, I'm Traci Park, and I am your member of the Los Angeles City Council. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about what exactly it is that I do in City Hall and why local government is important and matters to you. But before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about my journey into this crazy position that I now hold, and kind of what it means and how that background has informed the things that I'm working on in City Hall now. So I grew up here in LA County, and I was the daughter of a school secretary. My dad worked at GTE and climbed telephone poles for a living, and I went to college and law school and practiced law here in Los Angeles for more than 20 years. I represented and advised cities all over the state of California on policy development and legal compliance. I did general municipal litigation and a lot of personnel and labor relations work. I had never in a million years imagined that I might run for office. That was not part of my 5-year or 10-year plan for my life. But I also am a resident here in Venice. And I had, for the last decade, like many of you, had a front row seat to the terrible human tragedy unfolding on our streets in Venice and all across the city of Los Angeles, and frankly, across California and beyond. And I became increasingly frustrated with what felt like local government's inability or refusal, either one, to really intervene in a meaningful way and bring change that balanced the needs of people who need help and our existing communities so that everybody can thrive. And so when I took on the task of running for office, I really had not come out of a political background. I hadn't run for office since student council in 10th grade. But the issues facing Los Angeles weren't unfamiliar to me. And I had seen things that had worked and not worked in some cases in other cities. And I thought some of that experience would serve me well. And so I was elected to the city council at the end of November of 2022. We effectively took office in January of 2023. And my team and I hit the ground running. Both inside City Hall and here on the ground on the Westside. Council District 11, in my opinion, is one of the best council districts. It's the west side of Los Angeles. Council District 11 stretches from Mulholland Drive, our northern border, all the way down to and including LAX, all the way east to the 405 freeway. Right here within Council District 11, we have two independent cities, the city of Santa Monica and the city of Culver City, as well as Marina del Rey, much of which is unincorporated county. I tell those folks all the time, they are my constituents, even if they can't vote for me, because frankly, everything we do in the city of Los Angeles impacts them as well. So I represent the communities of Pacific Palisades, Brentwood, Mar Vista, West LA, Sawtelle, Venice, Del Rey, Playa del Rey, Westchester, Ladera. I'm inevitably forgetting one, and that will probably upset that community. But it's an incredible part of our city. It's home to LAX, the entry point for tens of millions of visitors every year. LAX is a regional economic powerhouse, the source of 75,000 local jobs. Obviously, our gorgeous Santa Monica Bay, our coastline, our bike path, our Santa Monica Mountains, our precious Ballona wetlands. We have some of the best academic and cultural institutions, Loyola Marymount University, the Skirball Center, the Getty Center, the list goes on. And it really, truly is the honor of my lifetime to get to serve our community by representing our interests at City Hall. So the way the work gets done in City Hall, we function a little bit like the federal government. We have a mayor who's our executive. We have a city council that's a little bit like Congress, divisive and ineffective in most things. And we also have our city attorney and city controller. We have 15 council districts in the city of Los Angeles, and we have a committee made up of council members for just about every topic under the sun, from public safety to land use to transportation to you name it, there's a committee for it. And a lot of the legislative work goes through that process. I have had a very interesting and heavy legislative caseload since I took office 2 years ago. I currently chair our city's trade, travel, and tourism committees. So we oversee everything related to the Port of Los Angeles, LAX, and Van Nuys Airport, as well as all of our tourism-related economy. Any one of those assignments could be its own full-time job. I also have the privilege and honor of chairing our 2028 Ad Hoc Olympics Committee. So that spans just about everything in the city of Los Angeles, and I have said often that de facto makes me the chair of every committee the closer LA 28 gets. I also vice chair our city's transportation committee, where we are doing a lot of work on sustainable investments in public transit. I am also a member of the public safety committee, and just recently I was assigned as a member to our city's budget committee. So it's a very labor-intensive scope of issues in my portfolio in City Hall. It's an incredible opportunity to represent the interests of the Westside in those capacities. And so I'm in City Hall about 4 days a week. I also serve as the city council representative on our claims board, which is where litigation matters go for assessment before they go to the budget committee. So you've probably all heard a lot about the state of the city's budget. All of it's true. We're very, very concerned about the economic picture going forward. And for me personally, as chair of the Olympics Committee, I have some real concerns about what that means for us. I had the opportunity to travel to Paris with the mayor and a delegation from the city to watch and observe and learn how one goes about putting on the Olympics. I am super excited. 1984 is indelibly ingrained in my memories as a child here in Los Angeles. But I wasn't a part of the team that brought the bid to Los Angeles. And so it's been an incredible learning opportunity, and to get to see it in real time is very inspiring. But truthfully, I came back from Paris with both a renewed sense of purpose and panic as the deadlines are starting to get closer and closer. We have a lot of work to do. So I have a ton on my plate. I know homelessness and housing and public safety are all top of mind issues for folks here on the West Side. We have successfully now housed more than 700 people who were living in tents and vehicles. We are moving folks through interim housing and into permanent housing more quickly than other parts of the city. We're cleaning up our sidewalks. We're getting people into appropriate settings with the care that they need. And we're going to continue this work with the same focus and determination that carried us through the campaign and into office. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'm really excited to answer some questions.
Thank you so much. So we are here at Startup Cafe, and we are a community of mostly entrepreneurs and investors. Can you share a little bit more about the startup landscape here and what you're doing to strengthen it?
It's a great question, thank you. So, economic development in the city of Los Angeles is something that we not only focused legislative efforts, but our top priority goals for me in the council office and as well as for Mayor Bass. Obviously, the last several years have been really challenging with the pandemic and the shutdowns, the impacts that had and continue to have in changing markets and landscapes here in Los Angeles. When we look at some of the economic red flags, high inflation, high cost of living, stagnant wages, under collection of sales taxes, TOT taxes, things like that, it's indicative of a softening business market and real estate market. Through some executive directives, Mayor Bass has begun the process of streamlining within City Hall what it takes to launch and maintain a new business here in the city of Los Angeles. We are starting to see that uptick in the last 12 months or so. That's a positive change. We have also done a lot of investment on and around our workforce development and training programs. As we are transitioning into clean and green technology startups in particular, there is a large market for that. One of the things that I want to continue pursuing here, especially on the West Side, is something that I would describe as a green investment district. Places where folks in the startup space around clean and green tech, for example, can share space, work together as an incubator. We have this incredible place in downtown LA called the LA Clean Tech Incubator that graduates a lot of folks that come out of diverse communities. We should house that in the infrastructure that we have here on the West Side. Playa Vista is a really good example. Venice is a great community for that. It's work that aligns with our goals on climate and sustainability. So there's a lot of focus on that kind of work in the creative space, which is really important here on the West Side. About 1 in 5 people work in or adjacent to our arts and entertainment economy. Really focusing on keeping that work here local. Mayor Bass, again, has worked very closely with the industry to expand our tax credit programs to keep and cultivate that work. And so there are a lot of different opportunities. And as we have seen businesses leaving California and leaving LA, especially for other local cities that foster a more business-friendly environment, we're trying to incorporate some of those best practices into how we're handling it in City Hall.
Great. Let's go back to the Olympics.
Aha.
So what does it take to pull off the Olympics? And where are we? How are we progressing there? I know you
no idea, but we're going to have to figure this out in short order. Yeah. So I'll say when we were in Paris, the leadership of Paris 24 and the city of Paris really welcomed us into their structure and their program. And they put together, the very first time it's been done in the Olympics, these innovative learning sessions where we on the delegation, and it was folks from LA City Council, the mayor's office, Metro, the county, other cities in LA County that are participating as hosts like Carson and Long Beach. We're all there and attended sessions on how to put on the opening ceremony, your venue approaches, what all of the things are that need to be planned for and done in those spaces, broadcasting and media, which I thought Paris did an incredible job of. You had all of the wonderful sports reporting and the opening ceremonies, which were visually very stunning, although I think some folks on the ground had a lesser experience given the unanticipated rain and some other issues that happened. But we were able to get the formal training on some of those issues and bring a lot of that structure and that work and planning back to the city of Los Angeles. And the way our Olympics is structured, there is the organizing committee, LA 28, that is responsible for securing the venues and putting on the productions around the competitive events. Metro is responsible for all of the transit and connectivity between Olympic venues and entry points into the region. The city of Los Angeles is responsible for everything between the metro exit and the venue. So what does that include? Your sidewalks, your streets, your trees, your sanitation, restrooms, shade tents, lost and found, multilingual signage that's going to be branded and across multiple jurisdictions. The scope of responsibilities just there is pretty substantial. We have a lot of work to do even to get the areas around the venues ready, just in good working order with the infrastructure. There is a series of planning that will have to go on as we do test runs and preparations. There's a lot of work to complete in and around LAX that we're leading on. We're excited about that. There is the entire separate matter of planning our Arts and Culture Olympiad. So we have various committees who are working on envisioning that. And starting early next year through the committee process, we're going to be making actual decisions about the venue locations and directions to our city departments to come back to us with the plans for the staffing that they need and the timelines and the deliverables that they're going to have as we get ready for the Olympics. But this is an incredible opportunity to drive forward transportation initiatives, economic development. It's a great opportunity for our local business and entrepreneur community to get technical training and get involved in our procurement system. So you have an opportunity to participate in the Olympics if that's of interest to you. And something else that we need to do is get our volunteer program together. The City of Paris had about 45,000 volunteers. I think we're going to need about 75 or 80,000 here in Los Angeles. Where are we going to get them, vet them, train them, supervise them, deploy them, feed them, and uniform them? Where am I going to keep 75,000 t-shirts? I don't know, but we are going to have to figure that out. And so it really is going to be an all hands on deck opportunity. And I think, in terms of the legacy pieces, there are the infrastructure upgrades and the transportation improvements and the ability to repurpose temporary venues and repurpose them in other communities. There's all of that, but to me, one of the most important things about it is the opportunity for LA to rebrand. We've been in the headlines around the world for a lot of wrong reasons over the last 5 years or so. Venice Beach is a perfect example of that, right? And I'll just note, we went in Venice in 2022, before I was elected, being designated the least safe beach in America, to back on Condé Nast's list of top beaches in the United States. And so, this is the imagery that we can create coming out of our city, the opportunity and the momentum and the excitement and the investments we need to be using to drive those long-term improvements, rebrand, and repair some of the reputational harm that I think continues to stifle the economy here in the Westside.
What I love about the Olympics is that it's one of the few times when we can, as a country, supersede this divisive time. And I'm wondering, in this moment in time, when things are feeling especially polarized and divisive and so hard, how can we all contribute to our local communities and feel that sense of unity?
Well, I think participating in groups and organizations like this, getting to know your neighbors and your colleagues in the spaces that you operate in, staying in touch and engaged with local government. Local government has an impact on everything in your everyday life, from whether your trees are trimmed, to whether the potholes on your streets are filled, to the kind of law enforcement presence you have in a community. All of that is decided at the local level. And there are a lot of ways to get involved and to stay informed about it. How many of you get my newsletter? 2 of you. Okay, I'm gonna ask one favor. Can you all please sign up for my newsletter? Go to cd11.lacity.org. The very first window that pops up is my sign up. I work really hard on it. I write it myself. I curate all of the information that goes in it, and I put that time and that work in it because I want to tell the story of what it is that we're doing in City Hall and what we're doing on the ground on the West Side, whether that's related to homelessness and housing or public safety or other issues. We oftentimes have meetings and opportunities to hear from the public, no one shows up. And I think it's really important for people to have their voices heard. It's important for me to hear from you because my job is to be your advocate and your ally in City Hall, and that means I need to hear from you about what's important and what you want our priorities to be. So those are some suggestions.
So maybe local government needs a bit of a rebrand too.
Yeah, I have no idea. Well, and in the city of LA, that just couldn't be more true. I mean, there's a not funny joke that goes around in City Hall. The only way you leave is death or jail. And we laugh out loud because it's true. I mean, how many council members have been hauled off in handcuffs in the last 5 years? It's embarrassing. Leaked racist audio tapes, members carving up power for themselves. I mean, yeah, it's reprehensible, frankly, and we do need a rebrand. But again, that's really important that you know who your local candidates are. Pay attention to who you're voting for and what they stand for, and who are the people and the organizations behind them. This is true at the state and the county level too, because we're local government. We're the most accessible layer of government. We actually pick up the phone when people call. We respond to emails, which also means we are the official complaint department for everything. We get blamed for just about everything under the sun. But really pay attention. And if you ever have questions about things, reach out to me and my staff, and we can kind of help guide you the right way.
And that's why it's so wonderful that you're here in our community, because well, I guess the Kin is a bit more of a vibe than wherever the city council meetings are held. But to meet us where we are, I think is so key, and so we definitely appreciate your presence here. We are a community that focuses a lot on wellness, well-being. Obviously, there's a huge mental health crisis that is so intertwined with our homelessness crisis. Can you speak more to that and how more people can access mental health services here?
Yeah. You're asking the billion-dollar question, frankly, and I wish I had better answers and solutions for it. I don't think there is any way to credibly deny, when you look around at the folks who are on the streets, that we have a health and wellness crisis on our hands. And whether what we're seeing is the product of a diagnosable mental disorder, or whether what we're seeing is the product of substance use disorder, the two can mirror each other, it's widespread. It's not widespread, it's rampant. And this stems from a decades-old opioid crisis and the decoupling of healthcare and housing, especially here in California, which has gone on over decades, coupled with a very hands-off approach when it comes to interacting with and treating folks with one or both of those conditions. As California closed down mental hospitals, mental health facilities, long-term residential care facilities, the concept was they were supposed to be replaced with more community-based living facilities and supportive services. As you all know, that never happened, and certainly not at the pace that was necessary to support tens of thousands of people who were exiting institutional settings and literally had nowhere else to go. We all want to be mindful of individual liberties and civil rights, and we want people to have decision-making power and autonomy over themselves. But clearly we've gone too far when the results are people who are incredibly unwell, living in piles of garbage on the side of a freeway or under a bridge, and we're going to leave them there to die. That's effectively where we are today. And I can't think of any other medical diagnosis or condition where we as a society would say, that's fine, leave them where they are. And so there have been some lackluster efforts to make some changes to force the issues. There was some bipartisan legislation that came out of Sacramento last year, SB 43, that would have expanded the gravely disabled definition, that would have opened up more mandated pathways to care for people who needed it. The county, which is responsible for the provision of mental health and addiction related services in the city of Los Angeles and across the county, voted to delay implementation of that for a couple of years. And their reasons for that are multifold, but one of them is the lack of back-end infrastructure to support the people, the acute care beds and the long-term rehab and recovery facilities that are going to be necessary. So that's out there. Governor Newsom had a signature piece of legislation that created care courts. You've probably heard about that. It's all voluntary, and it only covers a very, very narrow criteria of folks, people that have a certain identified mental health diagnosis, but not substance disorder, for example, substance use disorder. That has limited participation. We were expecting to see about 4,500 people go through that system. It was less than 1,000 at last count. And I've met with the judges responsible for it. Prop 1 passed in March of this year in the primary. That transfers a lot of funding that the county should be spending on these types of facilities and interventions up to the state level. I don't know. I don't think you're going to see any differences for a decade in terms of how Prop 1 plays out. There's a lot of work to do around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's not all positive. It's interesting though to watch the county. They just this week are taking up a motion on creating their own homelessness department and trying to better align county services. I'm not totally sure how I feel about it yet. But there's a lot of institutional restructuring of the service delivery programs that needs to happen at a lot of different layers.
I want to end on a positive note.
Yes, sorry, that was
we'll get
was
to your
awfully
questions.
bleak.
Just one more question before we open it up to the audience. Going back to the LA's rebrand, what's your big vision for what this city could be and already is? What's your vision for LA?
So we have here in Los Angeles one of the premier compilations of talent, entrepreneurial spirit, creative momentum, innovation, and opportunity anywhere in the world. And I don't think as a city we have effectively capitalized on any of that in decades. I want to be, and I want to leave, I want to be in, and I want to leave behind a city that is able to achieve its carbon neutral goals. I want to be mindful of these incredible environmental assets that we're all a steward of: our oceans, our mountains, our wildlife, our sensitive environmental areas. I want this to be a place where working people and families can thrive. I want this to be a place where people who rent apartments have an opportunity to own a home. I want this to be a place where new business can grow and thrive. We're the 5th largest economy in the world here in California. We need to continue to lead in tech and innovation, and we need to continue to demonstrate to the rest of the country and the rest of the world how to get things right. And I know we can do it, and I know that with your engagement and guidance and input on issues, we can continue to do that. But we have a lot of untapped potential out there.
Yes, well, thank you for leading the way.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So we had a presidential election recently, and I'm wondering, I know that Governor Newsom is already lining up a lot of lawsuits and ways to combat some of the negative effects of the new administration. What is possible to do on a local level in that regard?
Well, I mean, I think you're already seeing it. The city is very protective of its immigrant communities. Our city is extremely protective of reproductive rights. I think that Mayor Bass is uniquely positioned given her deep ties to federal government to continue to lead on this. I also think that she is wise enough to guide us through this in a respectful, responsible way. No matter how anybody voted or how anybody feels about the outcome of the election, we here in my council district share a set of priorities and things that we want to see accomplished. And we're all in this together. We may have to learn some new workarounds. We may have to change some strategies in how we approach things. But my values haven't changed. My goals haven't changed. And the work that I'm doing for you here isn't going to be any different. Might be a little noisier around the fringes, but it's not going to be any different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I heard a rumor that LA has recently surpassed San Diego in total amount of like biotech and pharma economic activity. Is encouraging that and nurturing that a priority for LA? And if so, what's being done?
Yeah, so like a lot of our key industries, biotech and pharma is up there. We're doing a lot of work generally across industries to make those new businesses viable and streamlined through our processes in the mayor's executive directives. That's one of the industries that is anticipated to grow regionally, not just in city of LA. We see that in some other sectors as well. We do a lot of our workforce development around key sectors that have been identified and focused training efforts around those. So those are some of the local things that we do around it.
Traci, I voted for you 2 years ago. I'm just so proud of the work you've done and just see you in the news. Visit my factory 2 months after the vote. All that is great. But let's talk about homeless. Mayor Bass promised 17,500 people off the street every year. We're nowhere near that. And I really believe that you're the person who needs to take leadership, because if it's not going to happen, all of these great ideas are not going to work. We got to solve this problem.
Yeah, I hear you. And there is a growing, mounting impatience and frustration on the issue. We know that here in Venice because it swept me into office, right? I mean, I was absolutely part of the movement that was tired of watching local government fail, spectacularly fail. We have made progress. We have seen homelessness drop in LA for the first time in a decade. I take all the credit for that because CD11, that's me and my team. Some other council members would groan out loud if they heard me say that. But I think what we have demonstrated is that a blend of approaches works. Putting reasonable guardrails in places in our community where they're warranted makes some sense. One of the things that was not working well before was that we have all of these embedded service providers. You've heard of all of them, Path and St. Joseph's and LASA and others. And they all operated in silos before. And when I took office, we had one-on-one meetings with each of them to understand what they did, where they worked, what their operations were, what their limitations on what they did were. And then we got everybody into a room and talked about what they did. And then identified all of the major tent encampments in CD11. And then we decided to move as a unit, all together with all of our resources, out to the first big encampment. And we brought everything we had to it. Everybody out there said yes to the help. In fact, people came from other parts of the city because it was one of the first ones that we did when we did the ABH site. And so we have now embedded LASA and the Circle team and others right in our council district office. So our team starts the day together, they go out together, they work together, they finish the day together, and they debrief together. We are finally all operating as a unit. And so, there's a lot of leadership that needs to come in a lot of different levels. We have 15 council members who each treat the issues differently in their council districts. I have always thought we need a consistent citywide approach, but careful who it is that gets to decide what that citywide approach is. So thank you for the support. Really appreciate it.
Hello. I have the mic. It was passed to me when no one was looking. So I guess this is a good lead into my question around homelessness and mental illness, and we'll call it that entire crisis, housing, the aggregation of all that has a lot of different solutions that have been proposed. And it seems to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the solutions lean on the side of either too much on either side of civil rights or too much on either side of public safety. And people are trying to navigate like, well, we can't just put them all on a bus and put them to Lancaster. Not reasonable. And we also probably shouldn't have them shoot up and give them needles in parks across from our schools. Also challenging. Both of those have been proposed as solutions. There's a lot of middle ground here. How do you navigate this dichotomy of extremes in civil rights versus public safety?
Great question. So one, I think about the budget and the dollars, right? It is pie. It is pie. We do not have billions of dollars to brick and mortar build our way out of this is one thing. So we're gonna have to get creative about what interventions look like because we're gonna have to stretch the dollars as far as we can make them go. All of that COVID era infusion of capital that was coming in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, that's all been misspent and gone away. Nobody knows where any of it is. But I think really it's getting granular about who is in the population that you're trying to serve. I have spent a lot of time in encampments talking to people. Older folks say all of the time they do not want to go into housing with youth. It makes some sense, right? You're older, you go to bed, you're quiet, keep to yourself. These kids are wild. They stay out late, they're noisy. It makes sense. It's a different set of needs based on a different demographic. Women who are victims of domestic violence need a completely different set of arrangements and services than veterans. Housing for homeless families with kids looks and feels different than housing solutions for other folks. We also need to have long-term residential care facilities and beds for people with serious issues that aren't not able to care for themselves, right? And there's different layers of acuity. There are some folks that can be fine with a once-a-month check-in with a case manager. There are some other folks who need supervised medical daily care. And we need to have the right blend of the right housing for the right folks. Another example of this, when you engage with folks who live on the streets, people who don't use drugs do not want to go into housing with people who do. We also have to focus on recovery beds. We are not going to fix homelessness as long as meth and fentanyl addiction is rampant on the streets. We're not going to fix it. And this stuff is more potent and more addictive than anything we've ever seen in history. And when you look at the long-term effects of, for example, P2P, the synthetic methamphetamine, if you look at the long-term effects on the brain, it's the same as a progressive neurological brain disease like progressive MS. It's a horrifying public health situation. And we have got to have the tools to get at that. We've got to get the drugs off the street, and we have got to have the ability to get people who are addicted into recovery. And this business with the, short-term holds and release back to the street, maybe up to 30 days if you have coverage that can get you into a rehab bed, that doesn't cut it for meth addiction. You have got to be in a sober, supportive environment for many months. Most addiction recovery specialists will tell you it's at least a year before people are well enough to really be able to be back on their own without a lot of support. And we don't have any of that. We don't have any of that. So I try to be very mindful about what we're building, who we're building it for, and how we get more creative about it. Youth who are aging out of foster care are the #1 feeder into homelessness for young people. And one co-living model can work great for young folks. We have a few places in the district, one that's ready to be leased up and a couple more in the pipeline. These are co-living situations, which are increasingly popular in places like New York and Miami and Chicago that are really expensive. You have a shared kitchen, living room area, but your own ensuite bedroom and bathroom. Great model for young people. It's similar to a dorm room suite that you would send your own kids to go live in, but even nicer. But the regulatory bureaucracy around how the government counts beds and units can't figure out a co-living arrangement. And so we have lost opportunities here on the ground in CD11 to bring an innovative housing model online and use it to prevent homelessness from a population, a demographic that would fit perfectly in that model. So those are legislative changes that I am constantly banging the drum about and pushing forward. And I have a great partner in Mayor Bass at the state level trying to make some of those changes. So I think that's part of it.
Anything on Prop 1 that's going to move some of the needle forward here?
I'm just going to be honest. I think it's moving money from one failing bureaucracy to another. All over California, counties have had money that is supposed to go to mental health facilities and services and addiction recovery and things like that. And they've repeatedly over decades failed to spend it and certainly get results. I mean, look at LA. It's a perfect example of it. And so the theory is pulling some of that funding back to state, let them work on some of that infrastructure. But I don't know, the state just lost $24 billion that nobody knows where it went. So am I confident about it? No. The litmus test isn't that great. I don't see that much success coming out of it. But and no matter what, even if it is successful, you're a decade away from even beginning to feel the impacts that it's going to make. They have to build it, and then they have to put people in it. And by the time we get around to doing that, there's a whole new other batch of problems and folks that need assistance. So I'm not convinced. I'm not.
Hey, I appreciate your willingness to talk about all these problems because I think that's how we find solutions. And I think we're in a place here where startups, technology can be solutions to help with some of these. In my case, we provide a mental health software at scale that can help prevent some of these issues. And so I'm curious how I can get involved with government and start to explore, does this make sense? Could you bring it in? Where could it make sense? How would you recommend starting those conversations? Is there a person or an organization or a director or through the council member? What's the best way to start?
So this is Sean Silva. Okay. He is our trustee field deputy for Venice. It's a really good starting point for a conversation about how you get introduced to government partners. We have separate organizations and city departments that all work in those spaces, and I don't know what your technology is or how it works. Maybe it's the school district, I'm not sure, but there may be different places where, probably it starts with somebody running a small pilot program to test it out and see how it works, and then eventually those things typically can grow over time. So just starting with us is usually even a good starting point. Yeah, and thank you for caring about that issue and doing work in it. I mean, this is widespread at a level that we have never seen before. And this is related to it, the mental health and the addiction kind of go hand in hand for me. Did you know that fentanyl is the leading cause of death in California for people aged 14 to 40? kills more people than car accidents now. Crazy. So this is like nothing we've ever seen before. And then on top of it, there's the new stuff coming out, the trank and ISOs and other things that literally causes flesh to rot on the streets. It's horrible. It is horrific. And we have to get it off the streets, and we have got to get these people help. And even if that means some tough love interventions, right? Because one of the symptoms of the disease is not being able to say, yes, that is literally what addiction is. So sometimes we're going to have to force the issue. But we need the tools to do that.
Anyone else?
Hi, thank you so much for being here. This was amazing. I was just wondering because, as California, I think is one of the few states that gives more back to the federal government than we receive. And, as a proud payer of the Sunshine Tax, I'd just like to make sure that my tax dollars are going to solve some of these issues rather than flowing out to the rest of the country. Is there any just insights you have on that?
I don't. On the inflow or outflow, state in versus state out, I'm not sure what that deficit is, but I think you're asking some right questions,
Well, then
right? Where's the money going?
Well, then actually you reminded me of a more local thing here. So I don't know if you were familiar with PodShare that was over here.
Yeah, I loved
Co-living.
PodShare.
Yeah, it was here for 10, 15 years or something, and they recently shut down. And so, you're talking about a lot of the co-living facilities. I know that was specifically for that, but obviously even somewhere here, we're in a working type place, co-living kind of works. Are there programs in LA that we're doing to support that? And
Yes, we are. And we're seeing, like I said, we've got a new building open on Venice Boulevard in Mar Vista that is gorgeous, that is exactly that. We have 2 more of them in the pipeline in Westchester, and I can't remember where the third is. But you're right, PodShare is the early model of it. And I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time over there. I know Elvina pretty well, and just an incredible group. But you see how that model works as interim housing potentially too for lower acuity folks that can be in that congregate setting. I love that model. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I say we can't build our way out of this, right? We are never going to have $100 billion to do brand new brick and mortar construction to pay for this, because that's what it would take to do for all 75,000 unsheltered folks currently in LA County, right? We're never going to have that. So let's get real. What can we do? That isn't a permanent home necessarily for someone forever, but it can be a really important stepping stone that we can do at a cost and scale that is much greater than the ineffective and slow approaches we've been taking for the last decade.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
A quick one on that front. Where are the 700 people that you mentioned earlier? Where have they been housed?
Yeah. So we have had the Venice Bridge home at capacity since I took office. We have been rotating beds there at a pretty steady clip. That is going to be closing down in December, and that's going to have an impact on our ability to continue doing the housing intervention and encampment work as quickly as we have been doing it. So that is accounted for a bunch of it. We also have 4 motels here in CD11 that we use as interim housing. And in the operations where we have partnered with Mayor Bass and the Inside Safe team, we have used an inventory of interim, mostly motel beds that include some outside of CD11. So that's primarily where it is. And part of the reason, and I know I was kind of tongue-in-cheek kidding when I say CD11 takes credit for the citywide drop, really the Inside Safe program, which at $250 million a year is a significant price tag. It is not sustainable forever, but what she was able to do was immediately create an expanded inventory of interim beds. See, for a decade, we have been focused on building the long-term permanent supportive housing, which we need, but at the exclusion of the shorter term things that we needed to get folks right now today out of this tent, off this street corner, and into a safer setting. So that's primarily where they have been going, into those places.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's something too that we've been improving on over time. When we first all took office together, and Mayor Bass will be the first one to say this, we were building the plane while we were flying it. on Inside Safe. We were cobbling together the resources that were necessary to try to help get folks together. I mean, we were going to Target and putting together baskets with shampoos and things in them for people. I mean, where we started to where we've come and how this is all working and operating is night and day. So really got to give credit where credit is due and the partnerships that it took to get it done.
Hi again. So can you give us some simple solutions that people like us can do to engage? I mean, do we go to city council meetings? Do we write letters? What do we do?
Yes, all of those things. So hopefully everybody signed up for my newsletter.
Yes. Got it.
cd11.lacity.org. Thank you. That is the best way to follow along. You can even reply to those emails. I only send them out once a week. I don't want to annoy people with too many emails, and I try to stick to stuff that I think you're going to care about. But that's a really good way to follow along. I do, on occasion, have a need and a call to action where I am asking for your help and your support. And when I need that, it may involve coming to, it could be a Venice neighborhood council meeting. It could be coming to a city committee hearing. It could be coming to a full city council meeting. Now, you can come in person to a committee or council meeting. That's always the most effective way to do it. You can also, at least for council meetings, call in and give a verbal public comment. And if you can't do either of those things, a written comment to the file helps as well. And if you don't know how to do that, Sean can direct you to the system. But that's feedback. I read that. And I don't know if my colleagues do this to the same extent that I do, but I read all of our council files. I read all of my staff reports. I write all of my own questions for committee. And I take my cue from what I hear from constituents. Certainly emailing the office, staying involved, inviting me to come to stuff like this. What groups and organizations, other ones, are you a part of? Who is in your network that you think this conversation would be helpful for or interesting to? We're always happy to come and do that. And it's great to meet folks out of the context in which I'm usually around. So this is amazing. I love this.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We are at time, so we're going to wrap this up.
Wow, it went fast.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much for your time today, your
welcome.
commitment
Yes.
to making our community better.
You're welcome. All right, guys, have a great day. And as we head into the Thanksgiving holiday, I just want to express my gratitude to all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.